and welcome to SpEd. On our show today, we have Dorie Flynn, who is the Executive Director of MANSEF. Thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about what MANSEF stands for.
Sure. MANSEF is the Maryland Association of Non-Public Special Education Facilities. So it's a very long name for an acronym, and it is an association of schools for children with disabilities. So I represent 98 schools all across Maryland. These are private schools, but publicly paid for. In Maryland, that term means non-public, and that's why we say the Maryland Association of Non-Public Special Education Facilities. We're serving children only who have special needs.
Okay, so children with only have special needs, so that's a whole umbrella of disabilities that we're talking about.
Right.
So you don't specify in just autism.
No, we serve children
blind.
with all sorts of different disabilities, anything from autism to mentally challenged to learning disabled, you know, the whole gamut, emotionally disturbed, the whole thing. Ages start at 3 and go all the way up to 21. So the schools are getting referrals from a public school system when the public school system is unable to serve the child. So through the IEP process, a parent and a team sit down at the local public school and determine through the IEP, an individualized education plan, what that particular child needs. It might be a certain type of structured classroom, a special service, teachers who are credentialed a certain way, whatever it might be. All of the goals and objectives for that child are written out on that IEP, and then it's decided where that IEP can be implemented. And sometimes the best placement would be a non-public school.
Okay. Now, how many counties actually participate in this?
Every county in Maryland can send a child to a non-public school if they need to.
Okay.
Because we work in partnership with public schools. We're part of the continuum based on what the federal law mandates. So IDEA, which is the Individualized Education Disability Act, it's a national law, federal law, mandates that there be appropriate services for children with special needs. And in that law, it mandates that there be a continuum. And so every public school system across the country must provide an appropriate program for every child with a disability. And when they don't have that, they make a referral to a non-public school.
Now, how many of those schools are categorized into different areas? Do you have just majority as far as that deal with behavioral issues, or is it more broader than that? It
can be broader than that. We have certain schools that do specialize in very specific disabilities. So one particular school might serve only children with learning disabilities, but we have other schools that might focus on autism as well as higher functioning children with Asperger's syndrome. Or we have a school that would be able to serve children who have possibly cerebral palsy and other disabilities. So it really runs the whole gamut.
Now, is there a certain criteria that a school has to meet in order to meet the standards to be a part of your organization?
First, they have to be certified by the State Department of Education, accredited. They go through a very stringent process whereby they fill out an application at the State Department of Education. They have to meet a certain level of COMAR requirements, which are the Code of Maryland Regulations, so that their standards cannot be lower than what a public school has. So we, in essence, meet a higher standard than what public schools do. For example, the teacher-student ratio at our schools is much lower than it would be at a public school. You might have a teacher with an aide for 30 students. In our schools, it must be a teacher and an aide for 9 students. Okay. So it's we do have some differences.
Okay.
Our teachers also have to be highly certified, just like they do in a public school.
That's what I was about to ask, as far as what is the qualification for teachers?
It has to be the same.
Okay. As far as, do you also have to have, do the schools need to meet certain standards in regards to service providers that come into the school system as well?
They do, absolutely. If your child needed speech therapy, the therapy needs to be delivered by a certified speech therapist. If it's art therapy or special tutoring, all of those credentials by that individual service provider must be met.
Now, are there any schools that that are non-public schools not associated with your organization, or does everyone have to be?
No, there are many schools out there that are also referred to as non-public that are private pay schools where parents are writing their own tuition check to send their child. So there are schools that do serve children with disabilities, but most of those schools do not have the same level of COMAR requirement that my schools have to follow. And so there is a bit of a difference. There are a few schools that have chosen not to be a member for whatever reason, but that's very few.
Okay.
Most everyone wants to be a member of MANSEF. We provide a great service to the schools by having a really strong working relationship with the State Department of Education. We give the schools a lot of information that comes out of the department on data and research. We've set up a lot of what are called public-private partnerships, whereby the state might grant money to one of the non-public schools, and they're able to open a school, a non-public school, in a public school building. So it's a way to keep kids, closer to home in the less restrictive environment.
Okay. I'm going to have to take a break real quick.
Sure.
But when I come back, I want to ask you a little bit more about what's called wraparound support services, correct?
Sure.
All right, we'll be back right after.